Today I'll tell you about two of the most tragic stories in cave diving history. The second story, in particular, takes an unexpected turn. As always, we leave it to the viewer's judgment. March 31st, 2012. Wasissa Springs, located in northern Florida, is one of the world's most dangerous and beautiful underwater cave systems. Its crystal clear water attracts divers. However, the world beneath the surface is completely different. Narrow passages, labyrinthine tunnels, and dead ends that disappear into the darkness. This cave system has claimed the lives of more than 10 divers in the last 40 years. Some disappeared, some got trapped, and some experienced events they will never forget. 29-year-old Marson was preparing to dive into this cave system with the Karst underwater research team. Marson was no ordinary diver. He had been swimming in these waters for years, had made dozens of dives, and was an experienced diver who knew the cave's dark corridors like the back of his hand. At least he thought so. His experience had given him a great deal of confidence. Before diving, Ryan noticed something. Marson's face looked slightly pale, and his movements were slow.
Marson, are you okay? You look a little tired today. I'm fine. I just went to bed late last night. No problem. Are you sure? If you want, we can skip today's dive and continue tomorrow.
Ryan, I've been doing this for years. I'm not about to skip a dive. Let's get ready.
Ryan hesitated for a moment, but didn't insist. Although Marson seemed confident he was fine, he wasn't really well enough. He had been suffering from a headache since last night, but trusting his diving instincts, he didn't want to postpone the dive. The team entered the water. The first few minutes went smoothly. Following the guide rope, they descended into the depths of the cave. The lights illuminated the dark tunnels, and everything was going according to plan. When they exceeded 30 meters, Marson still seemed calm, his movements controlled, his breathing steady. The headache persisted, but he was well enough to continue the dive, or so he thought. But at these depths, everything can change in seconds. As the team began to ascend, a silent catastrophe had begun in Marson's body: cerebral gas embolism. This condition was caused by gas bubbles in the bloodstream reaching the brain. The first symptom was a slight dizziness. Marson attributed it to fatigue. Then his vision blurred, as if the mask's glass had fogged up, but it hadn't. A strange ringing started in his ear, growing louder. His thoughts became jumbled. Where was he? What was he doing? Why was he here? These muddled thoughts swirling in his mind only made his condition worse. For a moment he couldn't recognize his team. He couldn't make out the silhouettes beside him. They were turning into dark shadows. Panic rose, but his brain couldn't even process the panic properly. There was only one thing he knew. He had to go up. But which way was up? He couldn't tell anymore. And just then, something unexpected happened. Marson suddenly veered off the descent rope. He broke away from the team and began to swim, but the problem was that he wasn't swimming toward the exit. He was heading toward a narrow crevice with no exit. His brain told him salvation is there, but it was an illusion. The embolism had imprisoned him inside his own body. His thoughts were no longer his own. Ryan realized the situation before it was too late and signaled with his light. He wanted to shout, "Marson, stop, turn back!" But all he could do was send a warning light. The light hit Marson's face, but Marson didn't react. He was trapped in a dark world created by his own mind, and in that world, that crevice was the only way out. Have you ever felt this way? Your brain tells you one thing, but a voice inside says, "No, that's wrong." Which one do you listen to? Marson entered the crevice. The passage was barely wide enough for one person. His shoulders scraped against the walls, and with every movement, his body was pulled further inside. Under normal circumstances, an experienced diver would not enter this crevice. But Marson could no longer think normally. The embolism had taken over his brain. After advancing a few meters, disaster became inevitable. The crevice narrowed, and Marson's body became wedged between two rocks. His chest was pressed against the wall, his arms pinned to his sides, his legs dangling behind him. He couldn't move his muscles. He couldn't go forward or backward. He was immobile, helpless, trapped. When Ryan and the other divers reached the crevice entrance, the sight that met their eyes was heartbreaking. Their friend was only a few meters away, but he was stuck at an unreachable distance. The crevice entrance was relatively wide, but it narrowed inward. Marson was stuck right at this narrowing point. Ryan didn't hesitate. He entered the crevice and tried to shoulder his way through. However, the crevice's sharp edges dug into his chest, preventing him from advancing. He had to squeeze his body to advance every centimeter. Finally, he reached Marson's leg. He grabbed his friend's ankle with his fingers. He held on tight. He pulled with all his might. Marson's body didn't budge. Ryan pulled harder this time. Nothing happened. The oxygen tanks were stuck on the rocks, the equipment locked in place, as if everything had conspired to keep him there. Ryan's muscles were burning. Pushing himself at this depth was dangerous, but he didn't care. He pulled again. Still no luck. He came back out breathless. He wanted to calm down, but couldn't. He started thinking. The tanks. He had to get the tanks out. If he could loosen Marson's equipment, maybe he could pull him out too. Ryan removed his own tanks. With only his mask and backup air supply, he re-entered the crevice. This time he went further. He was closer to Marson now, almost beside him. He reached out, trying to grab the buckle on Marson's tube belt. His fingers touched the buckle but couldn't open it. The angle was wrong. He couldn't apply enough force. He tried to change his position, but the crevice wouldn't allow it. Rocks pressed in from all sides. His chest was constricted. It was hard to breathe. And in that moment, Ryan began to experience what Marson had experienced. The pressure on his chest prevented him from breathing. He wanted to fill his lungs with air, but the rocks wouldn't let him. His heartbeat quickened. He could hear the sound of his own blood in his ears. Panic set in. His eyes locked onto Marson's face. His friend's eyes were open, but his gaze was empty. Ryan tried the clasp again. His fingers were trembling. The clasp moved but didn't open. One more time, it wouldn't open. Why wouldn't it open? The air was running out. Tom grabbed Ryan's leg from behind and started pulling. If he kept going a little longer, he would get stuck too. Ryan resisted. Just a little more, just a little more. His fingers went back to the buckle. He twisted it with all his strength and broke it. The buckle was broken, but the tube belt was still stuck between the rocks. Sometimes you do everything you can, but it's still not enough. Does that feeling sound familiar? If so, you're not alone, and you can share it with us in the comments. Ryan stared helplessly at Marson's face. His friend's eyes no longer looked at him. His chest wasn't moving. Ryan froze. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Tom pulled him back. This time, Ryan didn't resist. Ryan had done everything he could, but it wasn't enough. Marson's movements slowed. First, his arms went limp, then his head fell. The regulator came out of his mouth. 1 minute. He had only been stuck for a minute, and a few minutes later, despite all of Ryan's efforts, he took his last breath. The team watched helplessly. There was nothing they could do. They were in a passage with no way out. Marson had friends with him, but they couldn't save him. However, the man you're about to see was completely alone. You'll see the terrifying moments he experienced while trying to rescue a stranger meters below the surface. And those moments were recorded second by second. By the time Marson was pulled out from where he was trapped in the crevice, it was already too late. His body was motionless, his eyes open but lifeless. There was still air in his tanks. His equipment was working perfectly. It was his own body that killed him, and perhaps his failure to heed Ryan's warning that morning. Marson's body was brought to the surface. His eyes were still open, staring into the void. The team was silent. No one could speak. They had just lost a friend, right before their eyes, in a place beyond their reach. Now think, if your diving buddy said to you, "You don't look good today," what would you do? Would you listen to him? Or would you shrug it off like Marson did? Underwater caves are unforgiving. One mistake, a moment of inattention, a warning ignored, and it's all over. Marson K was an experienced diver. He had known these waters for years, but that day he didn't recognize himself. What part of this story affected you the most? The crushing pressure pressing down on his chest, the cold penetrating to his bones, and his hands moving desperately to cut the rope that was suffocating him. He was trapped 270 meters deep, where he had gone to rescue a stranger. How had he ended up here? Near South Africa's Kalahari Desert, a waterhole just 5 meters in diameter. This seemingly ordinary pond concealed the world's deepest freshwater cave beneath it, Bushman's Hole. At 283 meters deep, it was far beyond human limits. Water temperature 16 degrees, visibility 0, the pressure crushing. Divers call it the Everest of Diving, but it has another name, the Cave of Death. December 17, 1994. An exploration team plunged into this darkness. The youngest member was 20-year-old Deon Dreyer. His task was simple: descend to 50 meters and return. However, visibility in the cave that day was extremely poor. The slightest movement stirred up sediment, reducing the already weak visibility to zero. The moment Deon passed 50 meters, he lost his bearings. Panic set in. His heart rate accelerated. He tried to ascend but didn't know which direction was up. Darkness enveloped him from all sides. He lost consciousness, dropped his regulator, and the darkness swallowed him at a depth of 270 meters, in a tomb with no exit. No one from the team could follow him. That depth meant death. His family waited for days for his body to be recovered. But no team, no plan could retrieve Deon. They built a small memorial and placed it where they had last seen their son. 10 years passed. The body was still there. October 28, 2004. Two men stood in front of Bushman's hole, Dave Shaw and his partner Don Shirley. Both were among the world's most experienced technical divers. Dave dived 270 meters alone and broke the record, but the real discovery came after that. A diver lay on the dark floor, his posture distorted, worn equipment, a crumpled position. It didn't take long for Dave to realize the person he saw was Deon Dreyer. He approached slowly. He looked at Deon's face. The young body had been trapped in this cold darkness in the prime of his life. His eyes were open, but empty, as if he had been searching for the exit for 10 years. Something inside Dave broke. He wanted to get him out immediately, but he knew that the oxygen in the rebreather had been precisely calculated. The 9-hour decompression that was about to begin was already a difficult process to endure alone. For a moment, he reached out to Deon, then pulled back. Leaving the person before his eyes felt heavier than the silence in this cave. Have you ever felt this way? Have you ever had to leave someone behind, even though you didn't want to? How did you feel? Dave ascended for 9 hours. He waited at every stop. His thoughts kept returning to Deon. That young man had been there for 10 years. His family had been waiting for their son's body for 10 years, and Dave wanted to bring Deon back. As soon as he surfaced, he began making plans. He had one goal: to bring Deon back. He assembled a team of experienced divers, including Don Shirley. Each would be positioned at different depths, and the body would be brought to the surface in stages. The plan was perfect, but there was one obstacle: the family's approval. Deon's family objected.
No one else will die for our son.
I've seen your son. He's been there for 10 years, lying in the dark all alone. I want to bring him home.
What if you don't come back?
I will come back, and I will come back with your son.
After days of persuasion, the family silently nodded. 10 years. A mother and father had been waiting for their son's body for 10 years. If you were in that family's place, would you allow it? January 8th, 2005. The team gathered in front of Bushman's hole. The plan was clear. Dave would descend 270 meters, attach the body to a buoyancy balloon, and hand it over to Don waiting at 220 meters. Not a single mistake could be tolerated. Dave reached 270 meters in 10 minutes. Deon was still there. He opened the body bag and began wrapping Deon. However, he encountered an unexpected problem. Deon's body was not a skeleton. 10 years in cold water had preserved the body, but also altered it. The layer of fat had become soapy, soft like jelly. When Dave touched the body, his fingers slipped. He couldn't get a grip on the tissue. The body was heavy and unwieldy, swaying uncontrollably with every attempt to lift it. He tried to attach the buoyancy balloon, but the rope began to tangle. The first rope wrapped around Deon's head. The second rope wrapped around Dave's wrist. The third rope caught on Deon's equipment and pulled Dave's arms toward him. Now they were both tied together. The more Dave tried to untangle them, the tighter the knots became. Then the worst happened. The rebreather hose became knotted. Dave was struggling to breathe. Each breath was cut short and didn't fill his lungs. The more Dave tried to move, the tighter the ropes became, but staying still meant death. Panic gripped his entire body. At 270 meters in the dark, in a place no one could reach, panic was Dave's most dangerous enemy. Dave took the cutting knife in his hand. His hands were shaking. If he cut the ropes, he would leave Deon trapped in this darkness for another 10 years. But if he didn't cut them, he would be trapped too. What do you think was the right thing to do? Should Dave save himself, or should he keep his word and bring Deon to the surface? Dave knew he had to save himself first to retrieve Deon's body. He gripped his knife tightly and began cutting the rope. But time was running out. Oxygen was running low. He struggled, twisted. It didn't work, and in that moment, he realized he too was slowly dying. At 220 meters, Don began to worry. The planned time had long passed, but there was no signal from Dave. Don began a dangerous descent. In the darkness, he saw Dave's flashlight, but the light was motionless. As he approached, the scene was heartbreaking. Dave and Deon were tangled together, lying motionless. Don froze. His friend's eyes were open, but they weren't seeing. His chest wasn't moving. Don wanted to save him, but staying longer meant his own death. Don made a very difficult decision. He would stay alive and call for help. He ascended quickly. He continued on, stopping far less than necessary at decompression stops. His breath caught, his chest tightened, his vision blurred. He vomited repeatedly with the regulator still in his mouth. As he struggled to stay conscious, he encountered a backup diver at 100 meters and was pulled to the surface with great difficulty. There was a deep silence on the surface. No one could speak. One person was dead. One had returned from death. Guilt, fear, and grief were written on all their faces. No one dared to go back in. The cold here was merciless. But in the next story, the cold would be even more merciless, slowly killing two friends. A week later, a miracle happened. The change in pressure and the gas in the buoyancy balloon slowly pushed the bodies to the surface. Dave and Deon, entangled together, had risen to 50 meters. Finally, both were pulled out. Deon, who had been at the bottom for 10 years, was now on the surface thanks to a man who died trying to save him. Dave's helmet camera recorded that day. The lightless cave bottom, the hands holding Deon, the will to hold on despite the weight. He kept his word until his last breath. Would you give your life for a stranger? Dave did, and he never came back. Deon's family was finally able to bury their son 10 years later. Dave's family lost a hero. Dave died at a depth of 270 meters. But in the next story, two friends clung to each other for hours under a freezing waterfall, battling hypothermia. The cold showed them no mercy either. What moment in your life did this story remind you of? Share it with me in the comments.